Welcome back to another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Today we're going to be talking about the NBA media at large. We got some massive breaking news in the NBA media and the sports media world in general today with Shannon Sharpe and Gilbert Arenas. And we're going to discuss a little bit about the NBA media and where I think some of the big problems have been over the last few years, but why I'm a little encouraged of where it's going as NBC has bought the rights to the NBA going forward from TNT, or at least getting a significant part of what TNT had before. So we got a lot to break down and discuss when it comes to this topic. It's something that's very important to me because a significant reason for why I started this podcast in particular is because when you look at the NBA media and the way that the game is talked about, I don't think there's enough talk of the actual basketball on the court. There's a little too much, just personalities spewing nonsense, spewing insults to players, getting in fights with players and different things, especially on ESPN and TNT, a lot of those big news networks that carries the NBA Finals that I don't think did a good job representing what the NBA Finals this year could have been, and their coverage wasn't as good as maybe it's been in years past. So we're going to talk about that a little bit because it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I think I love the game of basketball, but I love real analysis and real breakdowns. There's time for debate, but I want that debate to stay within the confines of what's on the court and what's being played. And I think so much over the years has really come down to you turn on Undisputed with Shannon and Skip Bayless, and every single day they're talking about is LeBron James or Michael Jordan the GOAT. And at some point, that's just no longer what we want to hear you talking about at a national media level. There's so many great young basketball players to talk about and so many storylines that could be discussed that we're taking away from the growth of the game and the potential, growth of these young stars. So before we get into it, make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're doing in-depth breakdowns of NBA games, NBA players, NBA topics, so you don't want to miss any of those. So just make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate it. We're on the road to 1,500 subscribers and can't wait to get there. So let's start with this. Today, Shannon Sharpe was fired from ESPN amid settling a lawsuit between him and a female. We're not going to get into the specific allegations, but he was a significant voice on ESPN and a big. He was expected to be a huge future contributor to the network. He obviously was on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. Gilbert Arenas also today was arrested in a gambling scandal. And obviously we've seen Gilbert Arenas' podcasts everywhere on social media. I think it's one of the worst things that's happened in the NBA in a very long time. But we see that all over the place. And he was also on ESPN, but he was arrested today. We'll see what comes of that. And Marcus Morris, a guy who was also on ESPN over the last few months talking NBA, was arrested yesterday in a fraud scandal. So we're not going to get into any of the specifics of, what they did or should they be arrested or whatever. But I think it comes to a bigger topic where ESPN has spent a significant amount of their resources on personalities. And I think that they miscalculated what the NBA fan base wanted at large because they saw so much success with shows like First Take when it had Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. Then when Skip Bayless left, you had Max Kellerman, and these debate shows started to really take over the world, I think. And obviously in a debate show, it's a significant amount of the personality that's really, driving the ratings, driving the revenue, because obviously if you have two people debating that aren't fun to watch, you're not going to get significant ratings, you're not going to get significant growth. But I think they overcompensated, taking away some of the actual programming that us NBA fans liked. And we heard a lot of talk this last season when it came to NBA ratings being down. And, just some worry over the future growth of the league. And in my opinion, it's because the guys that you have on TV are not talking about these future great players that we have in the NBA. Shai Gilgeous Alexander, Nikola Jokic, obviously these guys have played for a few years, but Nikola Jokic, Jayson Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards, all these guys are, Tyrese Halliburton obviously was in the NBA Finals, there's so many NBA players that are exciting, that could really push ratings and revenue, but because the NBA media has spent so much time debating, is LeBron James the best NBA player of all time? Who's better, LeBron or Steph? Is Steph the best point guard of all time? Is Kevin Durant on social media too much? They're so focused on debating topics that really are not that fun and interesting to listen to anymore. LeBron James is in his going into his 23rd year in the NBA. I don't want to hear him debated against Michael Jordan every single day for 23 years. There becomes a point where that is no longer interesting, and there's not enough new information that LeBron's providing for him to change anyone's opinion when it comes to that topic. So, if you're a LeBron guy, I think at this point you're pretty set, and if you're a Jordan guy, at this point you're pretty set. We can really build the NBA when talking about breaking down the games, breaking down the film, and this is why I think the NFL has such a significant advantage when it comes to the people that they have in the NFL media. They have guys on TV that are breaking down film, that are breaking down analytics. The ESPN show has Ryan Clark, Dan Orlovsky, Mia Kimes, all really diving into the depths of NFL conversation. And you're talking about a majority of the teams in the league. You're talking about at least 20 of the NFL teams on a pretty regular basis, where if you look at the NBA, there's at least 20 teams in the NBA that never get discussed when it comes to the national media at large. And as someone who consumes a lot of sports media, I like hearing conversations about LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets, or Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers, or what's going on in Utah with Ace Bailey, and I am someone that enjoys those kinds of conversations that don't get talked about at all at a national media level. And that's why I think we're seeing the growth of podcasts like Enjoy Basketball, with Kenny Beecham and guys who, they were actually on ESPN, I believe, during the draft with Brian Windhorst. But people, I think we're shifting back to liking that kind of content. Jason Timpf, guys who really watch basketball. We saw Stephen A. Smith at the NBA Finals playing phone games while the game is actively being played. That's not a guy who's locked in. He's in there doing political commentary. He's doing his podcast. He's got a million things going on. Stephen A. Smith is a bigger personality than he is actually diving into the film and what's going on. Gilbert Arenas said that Karl Anthony Towns, built like a WNBA player, has girl hips. Shaquille O'Neal said that if Rudy Gobert is a Hall of Famer, he'll wear a dress. This is not real NBA analysis. This is petty insults, clickbait, and nonsense that, quite frankly, I don't think pushes the game forward and progresses it to where we want it to be as a sport and where it can really be. But why I'm encouraged is the NBC, like I mentioned earlier, bought the rights to the NBA, and they have on the broadcast they're going to have Mike Tirico and Noah Eagle calling the games. Both I think very serious commentators. They're going to have Reggie Miller, Jamal Crawford, Grant Hill, Carmelo Anthony, and Michael Jordan as contributors when it comes to breaking down the NBA. And all those guys are obviously pretty significant players in NBA history, but hopefully guys that will take the analysis seriously, that'll watch the game, that'll study, that'll really add what we've longed for so long to the basketball conversation, rather than Kendrick Perkins hopping on TV yelling that Nikola Jokic is a stat patter like Russell Westbrook, or Skip Bayless, like I mentioned earlier. Just luckily Skip Bayless is off TV. If you can't tell, I can't stand Skip Bayless, but luckily he's finally off TV. No one wants to pay him, and his podcast sucks. So I do think that there's light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to this conversation, but the NBA has so many young stars, Victor Wembanyama, guys I mentioned earlier, that this sport, Cooper Flagg, that this sport really has potential to grow globally like we've never seen. Obviously, guys like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe, Shaq, Tim Duncan built the framework for this, and now we have the opportunity for this sport to continue to globalize And it sounds like the NBA is going to be doing some significant work in Europe, whether it's buying a league or, some sort of expansion in the US has been talked about too. This sport has the potential to grow. They've signed massive deals with TV networks. But the problem is on social media, we're watching clips of people yelling that guys have girl hips. That's not real basketball analysis, and it's why I think I'm frustrated as an NBA fan and a person who really loves the sport. But it's something that I think can be turned around. I think that ESPN has to realize that that's not what we want. As much as those might create clicks, those aren't good for the long-term growth of the sport. And that's where I think the NBA has to step into a degree and say, yes, you might be getting some ratings, some revenue there, but if we want our sport to thrive, we need you talking about the future faces of the league. Because there's so much greatness and so much talent, and it's going to continue to be that way as the sport progresses. But that's a significant part of what we wanted to talk about today. With some of that breaking news, it kind of really had it on my mind when it came to, the state of the league, the health of the league, but where I think it could go. And it's why YouTube really gives lots of options for the fans to decide what content they want to consume, whether it's a podcast like Enjoy Basketball that really knows the history of the game, that really knows, ins and outs and watches basketball on a night-to-night basis. Jayson Timpf, who's really breaking down what's happening on the court, different sets, X's and O's, stuff that, a casual basketball fan might really enjoy to watch when they might not understand that or have played basketball at any high level. So we're going to continue to break down basketball on this channel. I believe the way that it needs to be broken down, talking about the NBA, talking about what's happening on the court, talking about, our future superstars in this league. So make sure that you take a second to subscribe. Appreciate y'all checking in and watching the channel today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate y'all. Cyborg out.